Hi, welcome to Straight Talk. You know, every day we read the paper, we look on the news, and we see a celebrity, somebody die from drug overdose or a drunk driving crash or alcohol poisoning, and we see all the death and destruction that addiction causes. Today on Straight Talk, we want to focus on something positive, on hope and redemption and giving back. And we're going to do that because I want you to understand that there is hope and there is recovery and that there is a way back if you get into a situation with addiction where you feel there's no hope. And we have someone who's been on this show before many years ago when he was in treatment. And now here he is telling about his story and his success. Monte Twilly, who, you know, just it's so great to see you again and to have your story. And you're going to talk. We're going to talk about recovery, talk about giving back and addiction, because I think everybody out there feels kind of hopeless. So congratulations on your recovery. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How many years? When were you on the show before?
Yeah, I was on the show back in, I think, around June of 1998. I looked at the tape just the other day. And the last thing you had said to me is, good luck. I really wish you the best. So I'm proud to know that I've been consistent, actually, for about 14 years.
Wow, so that's fantastic. Now, you were on the show before because you were in a treatment program here in Baltimore at the Salvation Army.
Correct.
Okay, and now you're chairman of one of the Salvation Army programs.
Yes.
So you've certainly come a long way. But let's talk a little bit about how you got to where you were that got on the show the first time.
Sure. Well, Mike, what brought me to Baltimore is about 14 years ago. I was working for the Salvation Army down on the Eastern Shore, where I'm from. And at that particular time, I had gotten fired as a result of not going to work. You know, I had been in addiction, particularly with crack cocaine, for about 10 years. So after I got fired, probably about 2 weeks later, I said to the commander, hey, tell me more about this ARC, this Adult Rehabilitation Center. There are about 119 of these ARCs around the nation. And quite honestly, I didn't want to come to Baltimore because I thought I might run into somebody, you know, that I knew and all. Let me share with you, I did not come to the Salvation Army Rehabilitation Center because of recovery. Actually, I came because I was homeless. I didn't have a place to stay. My mother and other family members, you know, a lot of times family members are the biggest enablers when it comes. So I had taken my mother serious. She said, no more peanut butter jelly sandwiches, no more baths here, you've got to go. And so I came in, stood still. The program at that time was 6 months. It's more like about a year. And I actually stayed as a resident for about 2.5 years. And finally, and one day they tapped me on the shoulder and said, we think you're probably ready. And so then I stayed another year as a employee, and then moved on around 2000 and worked in corporate America for about eight years or so.
So did you grow up here in Baltimore or on the Eastern Shore?
Yeah, I grew up on the Eastern Shore,
okay, right.
And I'm a former military guy. I did about 10 years of active duty.
How'd you get involved with crack cocaine?
Well, I'm remarried, but the first wife had basically turned me on to that. I had experienced that. And it's funny because in 1986, as I look back and I did some Googling, et cetera, there are a number of things I believe that happened in 1986. Richard Pryor, you know, basically, remember, got burned up. Lynn Byers pretty much didn't get out of the gate as a result of what happened, you know, first draft pick, et cetera. And then we had some other things. So, and then there was a guy by the name of Michael Ray Richardson. He was a NBA basketball player. So there was a 17-page article. So bottom line is there was a lot out there at that time. And I never thought that I would have saw myself involved in that as well. So it really took me aback. I tell you, I've really been through something. I've been homeless. I've lived on the street for a while, et cetera. So it's awesome in terms of what I've experienced. I'm glad I did, but I want to help others to work on their recovery.
Now, when you got into the Salvation Army, I mean, when people out there have drug and alcohol problems and they're looking for help, you know, there's not much out there for help. You know, they either can't afford a program because it's too expensive, they don't have insurance, or it's just not available. You were able to find the Salvation Army. And people don't think of the Salvation Army as having a drug and alcohol program. You know, we think of Christmas,
Right.
bell ringers,
Bell ringing.
and I know we think of donation of cars,
Right,
Because
exactly.
they've always done a good job with that commercial.
Mm-hmm.
But to think of it as a drug and alcohol program, people probably wouldn't think that, would they? How did you know to go there?
Well, prior to being fired, let me take you back to around 1995, 96. I was serving as a PR director on the Eastern Shore. And I was in my addiction. I just told the commander at that time, or the
You were
administrator.
working for the Salvation.
Yes, I was working as an
okay.
employee.
Gotcha.
I was the PR director,
Okay.
and I walked into his office one day and said, "Listen, I know this is going to blow you away, but I'm into an addiction. I've got a crack problem, and I want to quit." I asked him if I could quit. I was in the middle of a PR campaign around November, December. We know that's one of the busiest times for the Salvation Army. So he said, "Well, I'm not sure what we're going to do." And then I was in the Maryland National Guard. I was actually coming up here once a month. I was in the public affairs detachment that went over to Bosnia, Operation Joint Endeavor. So I never made it to Joint Endeavor. Long story short, my urinalysis came up dirty, if you will, positive when I, just before, the day before I was to go into Bosnia. We were over training that winter in Germany, and that particular commander pulled me in and said, you know, here's the news. They were trying to pretty much send me back, but for some administrative reasons, I stayed back for about 10 months or so until they came back from Bosnia. And I came with them back to Maryland, and at that time, they agreed to pretty much give me an honorable discharge and said, pretty much, you'll never be in the National Guard anymore.
Yeah.
Thank God.
And then let you get some help.
Yes. I finally what happened not long after I got back, I ended up using again and let my pride get in the way and those sorts of things.
But luckily, you ended up, you knew about the Salvation Army because you were working there. So we're talking with Monte Twilley, who is a recovering addict, motivational speaker, is out there helping people all over, not just Baltimore, but all over. And we're going to talk a lot about it. But you're joining us because we're talking about recovery. You know, we're talking about that there is hope out there. So if you know someone that you care about who has an alcohol and drug problem, pay attention, you know, and we'll tell you where to go and what to do and how to get that person some help. So we're going to hang in there, come back for the next segment, and we'll keep talking about it. Again, we're talking with Monte Twilley, and when we come back from a break, we'll continue to talk. So stay with us. We're coming right back to Straight Talk. Hi, welcome back to Straight Talk. We're talking with Monte Twilley from the Twilley Group. He's a motivational speaker. He's a recovering addict. He was been on our show back in the late 1990s. He's telling us about his story of recovery and how he's giving back and how grateful he is for being clean. And we're talking about addiction, and we're talking about the need to get people help and not to feel so helpless. You know, every day we see people dying and we read about it, and you know, most of them are celebrities because they're on the news, but for every celebrity that dies, there's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of everyday people that are overdosing and dying from drugs. So, Monte, I'm glad you're on the show. I'm glad you're clean, you know, and sharing this information. Now, we were talking about your recovery, and you've been clean 14 years, and now you've started the Twilley Group. And what is that? What are you doing? Tell us.
Well, the Twilley Group basically started around, I think, 2004. Started as a small public affairs sort of boutique, if you will, dealing with nonprofits, et cetera. Okay. But probably about 3 years ago, I sort of changed the business model, and pretty much now it's public speaking, motivational speaking. It has some goals, of course, to be able to write some books that I need to get done, particularly by the end of the year. And so I just felt led that my niche in terms of public speaking and motivational speaking, of course, is in the arena of recovery. And then, of course, I do a considerable amount of speaking at churches as well.
So when you go out and you speak, what do you say?
Well, I share the story that I've gone through. You know, people have a tendency to look at somebody. You know, a lot of people size you up in about 15 seconds, and they determine that, you know, you're this or you're that. So a lot of people are rather taken when I share that. They say, well, you pretty much weathered the storm pretty good, you know, in terms of going through and homelessness and those sorts of things. So, you know, they say, you know, certainly I've cleaned up. But the reason why that I felt led to share my message is because we know that addiction is a real bad thing. I tell you, I started when I was 13 years old. I'll never forget when I took that first drink of alcohol, and it really, you know, numbed me and burned me. And then, of course, I'm actually about in my 50s, so yeah, I had a bout for about 30 years of false starts, situation after situation after situation. I had a wonderful time in the military, and of course, you know, I'm a baby boomer, and a lot of us baby boomers did the pot thing and those sorts of things, but I never ever thought that when I got into the crack cocaine and the freebasing and all that, that just took me all the way out. And I was one of those working addicts, if you will. I'd never, you know, it really had gone to jail before and those kinds of things in prison. But we know when you're into your addiction, you basically got two things to look forward to. And you know it certainly better than I do in terms of, you know, your advocacy, and that is either institutions or death. And so had I stayed in that, obviously I was headed down one of those roads.
And to be able to share that story through churches and anybody that'll get you in there to speak.
Right.
You know, it seems we're at a point now where, you know, between the economy and unemployment and people feeling kind of down.
They do.
You know, when people, in our business of addiction, when people are down, our clients go up.
Right.
Because, you know, no matter what, when people are unemployed or depressed, they drink.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they drink a lot. The alcohol sales are the one thing that hasn't declined.
Right.
You know, that goes up. So we need people like you more than ever, you know, when times are bad, because people need to know that there is hope.
There really is. There really is hope. And one of the things I do is, and it's one of the goals that I have, particularly for the next 2 years, I have a goal to speak at all the Salvation Army adult rehabilitation centers throughout the nation. There's actually 119 of them. I've been to out in Southern California and some other cities. Of course, I just spoke more recently, about a week or so ago, at the Baltimore ARC. So that's one aspect. And then another thing, of course, in going into 2012, I really have some big goals. I want to do some motivational marathons and those sort of things that not deal with particularly advocacy as far as addiction, but we want to talk about finances, a holistic approach in terms of people actually reaching their destiny.
You're watching Straight Talk. If you or someone you care about has a problem with alcohol or drugs, get help. Help is out there. You know, you got to do what you have to do to help the people that you care about. So I want to thank Monte. Thank you for watching Straight Talk, and we'll see you next time.